Rack.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, great. Yay. I'm so glad.
So just a little technical difficulties starting today, but
a little.
it's all right.
It's horrible. All right.
We just caught up with each other. So
all right.
Here we go.
Meeting. Now, the problem is that once everything restarted, I lost all my links. So we're going to have to just kind of muddle our way through this. Maybe
okay, I can look.
Renee can look stuff up as we go.
Yeah, I can.
Case law, because
do
the
that.
problem with the exceptions is that the case law that is cited in the exceptions does not necessarily coincide with the exception. Sometimes it's case law that comes from left field, and that's the case law they cited here. So we need to look up, like when we get to the child pornography one. I remember what that one's all about. There's not an exception for child porn, obviously, but what the case law is about, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it when we get to it. All right. So two things. And the other thing is, I think I'm spending too much time on these things, getting a little too in depth. The purpose of this was supposed to be for us to read the Constitution at least once, get through it. And I think that's probably what I'm going to start doing, is maybe not worrying so much about the case law, reading it as the originalist intended. We can talk about it as it was intended to be. And then if we decide we want to get further in depth, when we get through everything, if you guys decide we want to do the First Amendment, we'll just spend a week, 2 weeks on the First Amendment and go through case law, and I can have attorneys pop in here and talk about the law. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
I just think we're getting a little too, I started thinking about it, and the First Amendment should not have taken us 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the Second Amendment will be the same way. So I think we're just going to kind of pare it down a little bit into how it was written and what was meant by it by then. Because case law, man, we just go down that rabbit hole. So
Minutia.
all right, so let me get through. We'll just read it real quick one more time, just to remind everybody what we're on here. We're on the First Amendment, which is Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, we got through religion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to kind of fast forward through all this. If you remember, the religion is basically restraining the government from telling you what you can and can't believe, and setting up a national religion. You have the right to not believe whatever, not to believe anything, and you have the right to believe whatever you want to believe in, and they can't get in the middle of it. They also can't get in the middle. And we got into a pretty good talk on the page.
Jenny, could you move, please?
You bet. I was just getting ready to.
We got into a pretty good talk on the page. I don't know, those of you that saw the video of the pastor that backed out the police in Canada when they showed up.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was awesome. And, you know, I don't like people calling people Nazis because it's overused. But I think a Polish guy,
Right?
family was actually under Nazi rule and saw how the Nazis came to be.
Right? Yeah.
I give him a little more leeway, right?
Yep. Right.
Now, I'm not saying the Canadian government's a bunch of Nazis, right? And I don't think they're ever going to put people in extermination camps. But when you got the police coming in on the holiest of days in the middle of services to shut things down like they did in England, I think is a big problem.
I saw him interviewed today on the news, and he said, he said, pastors, clergy, everybody, we need to take the power back because they're not going to give it willingly.
Well, sure.
And what they're doing is, he's like, you know, I lived in Poland at the time of Solidarity movement. He said, and if we hadn't done that, nothing would have changed. So that's why he stood up to them and said, get out of here.
Boy, he did too. And didn't he want to hear what they had to say? And she kept trying to say, I think she was saying at the end that I'll be back. My guess is that she's not going to be back.
Right.
Right.
So if you haven't watched it, the link is on our Everyday Constitution page. Go watch it. It is fantastic. So
and there should be more of that. And there's a picture I was going to share today that I saw on Facebook today, and it basically said that as lions, the time for us to wake up the sheep is over. That now it is the time for us to wake up other lions, right? And
Yep.
I think that's pretty powerful stuff. And this pastor he's woke, right?
Yeah.
He's not
But
taking-
just a reminder though, it is Canada and they do not
It is.
fall under the Constitution.
Nope,
Its
nope. And
protections.
that's what we said on there. And if you see, we've had that here, right? We
Mhm.
had, how about those cops? What state was it where they showed up and shut
California?
drive up services? People were in
It's
their own
California.
cars and they started issuing tickets. So I don't know whatever happened with that. I should have followed it. I don't know what happened with it, but
If I remember right, I think their governor told them like, hey, knock it off.
yeah.
Because
And,
making
and
the
that's,
national
listen, the
news.
federal government knows their role here, right? They can talk tough all they want, but you have not seen the federal government come out heavy-handed and try a national lockdown and tell churches that they can't do things. Now, some of the states have tried, so far not successfully, but yeah, I mean, the First Amendment, and that was, Renee, one of the conversations we got into with what's his name?
Celio.
Yeah, something like that, right? I
Yeah.
looked at his page, and he seems pretty smart.
Yes.
I went through a lot of his stuff. Now he's left leaning, but he seems to be a centrist. But
And that's what Bill and I kind of talked about. It was if anybody wants to go back and read through that, I said it seems that maybe the case law that he was taught may have been from maybe more left.
yeah,
I-
and I got that from him.
And yeah, but
Part of the
we
problem
did
with the
have a really
conversation,
good,
too, part of the
Yeah.
problem with the conversation though is that he would say things and we would answer, and then he would go off in a completely different direction. Like
Yeah.
basically not even acknowledging, right? I mean, everything obviously I'm talking about is the federal constitution, and he kept going to the states have the right to do this, the states have the right to do that. And I'm like,
Right.
look,
well, his argument was if you go by the First Amendment as it was written, they were giving, or as on the Constitution as it was written, they were giving states control over their small state. They
sure. And nobody argued.
federal
it.
government, they didn't want a single dictator, a king or anything like that to come in. So I understood what he was saying, but I guess I didn't realize that there were all those other instances. He talked about the slaughterhouse rule cases or something. So I wanted to go in and look into that more to read up on that because I am interested in, I personally feel, and I think that that's kind of an interpretive stance. What he was saying that, oh, they didn't say anything about the states not having control. States can do what they want.
See, and I disagree. I disagree.
I was
don't-
thinking that the Constitution was written and the whole idea of the Declaration of Independence was that the people at the bottom are the base of the pyramid. We are in charge.
And that's what I
and-
said. That's what I
Yeah.
said. Rights. And I said,
Yes.
look, man, the Bill of Rights are strictly talking about individual liberty. And that's where he went off in his tangent about how the states
Yeah.
the states don't have to follow the Bill of Rights. And I'm like,
Yeah, so I think,
I think
it comes to
once they
interpretation
signed
a little
on-
bit, but
Once they signed on to the Constitution as a state, they were agreeing to that.
sure, it's a contract.
It's a
Yeah.
contract.
And that's what we
So-
talked about,
So,
right? It's a contract.
yeah. So anyhow, we digress a little. We need
All
to,
right. Well, and we did. So anyway, that's where
so
we are.
read through that and we can have another meeting, maybe talking about that more. When we're done with the rest of the amendments, we can come back to it because it was interesting.
So then we talked about freedom of press, freedom of speech, right? Abridging the freedom of of speech or of the press. Obviously, the biggest takeaway from that is that your freedom of speech
Excuse me.
only, it doesn't cover you under private settings, right? It only covers you when the government is trying to abridge that freedom. It restricts the federal government from doing that. It doesn't restrict your employer from doing it. It doesn't restrict your employer from telling you that you can't go on Facebook and talk about, talk about work. It doesn't right now, it doesn't restrict Facebook. or Twitter. I mean, big tech, we've seen it, right? How they are,
Section 320 protection.
right. Well, for now, at least for the next 4 years or 2 years.
2 years.
But yeah, so it's, everybody, and that was one of the things I said with that video, is this is what happens when people are not ignorant of their rights, right? That pastor knew exactly what his rights were, and he did
Mhm.
not back down from them. He didn't shy away from them, and he handled his business, and he threw those cops out of there, right? But then you got the lady at the bank who got pepper sprayed, or not pepper sprayed. She got thrown on the ground, and everybody said it was because she wasn't wearing a mask, and it had nothing to do with the mask at that point, right? But she knew her rights, well, and she didn't. And it's the same thing with the freedom of speech. Everybody wants to yell freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech, but you need to understand what freedom of speech covers, and what it protects. And it's protecting you from the government. It's not protecting you from Walmart. It's not protecting you from Facebook or from, you can't get up in the
Privately owned
middle of,
businesses.
you get up and you want to start talking, giving some big impassioned political speech in the middle of Fiesta Jalapeno, and they tell you to leave, and you got to leave. There is no freedom of
Mhm.
speech. So let's go through some of the exceptions here. The exceptions to freedom of speech. Now, I was going to go one by one on them. I just have the whole list here. All right. So the very first one is incitement. And that case law is Brandenburg v. Ohio. And if you're not familiar with
Mhm.
Brandenburg v. Ohio, you probably should, because that has everything to do with what has happened recently with Donald Trump, and why Donald Trump's not going to be found guilty or charged with anything. I know that half the country believes that he incited these people to go and storm the Capitol, but it is a very narrow definition of incitement, and it needs to be eminent. And the attack on the Capitol actually happened while he was talking, before he even finished. And there was chatter, and there were rooms, and there was this thing was already set up weeks before he even gave his speech. So it's going to be hard for anybody to prove that what he did resulted in imminent violence, right? And what Brandenburg v. Ohio was basically a KKK guy who was out giving his impassioned speech about, the races and everything else, and lit a cross on fire. And afterward, people got hurt. And I don't remember if they went to a house, but basically Hamilton County, state of Ohio, tried to charge Brandenburg with inciting people, because after his speech, they continued on and went and ended up harming people. And the Supreme Court said no. Had he been there at the time and said, look, this is what we're doing right now. Everybody follow me. We're going to this house. We're going to light this house on fire, and we're going to kill all the black folks in there. That's a little different. But the fact that he gives us impassioned speech, people get impassioned. He's done. They go their separate ways, and they commit these acts. That's on them. And that's what's going to have happened here. Incitement is very narrow.
And I posted a link in the chat about it, so you can read more, and I'll put it in our documents. So,
But when you get into that narrow band of incitement, that is an exception to free speech. You cannot incite people to commit violence. You can't, if Donald Trump had got up there and said, look, and the other thing was, how far were they? It was a half-hour walk, I think, right, from where they were to the Capitol. And that cooling off period that's huge when it gets to
Mhm.
court. Now, if they were on the steps of the Capitol and Donald Trump said, look, we're not going to take this shit anymore. Everybody come on, let's go. Everybody, let's
Yeah.
break into the Capitol and let's go stop this. And then everybody stormed the Capitol. Now he's got problems. Now there's incitement there. But
Well, doesn't incitement, it includes direction and directive, as opposed to
you know what? I don't
heightening
know.
emotion?
Jeff, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly
yeah.
how far you have to, and how detailed the incitement has to be in order for it to be considered incitement.
You mean like no dog whistles? Is that your question? Is it a dog whistle that everybody likes to use
Is
that
it a
phrase
dog
now?
whistle, or is it actually, listen, A, B, C,
Right.
D, E. This is what we're gonna do. We're on A right
Right.
now. Let's go.
Because a dog whistle is very subjective.
It is. It is. So yeah, so for incitement, it's got to be narrow. Moving on to libel, fraud, and perjury, U.S. versus Alvarez, and I, like I said, I lost all my links that I was going to refer to. So if you want to look that up, Renee, real quick, and just, you know what, it's Oyez, I think is how you say it, O-Y-E.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're really good on having a quick summary on what the case was.
Yep.
But libel, fraud, and perjury, right? You cannot libel. You can't go out there knowing what you're going to say is false, just to defame somebody. You can't make fraudulent claims, and perjury. Obviously, you can't make false statements under oath. Those are all exceptions to free speech. Should I wait for you, Renee? Or you-
Is slander included in that?
Is slander down there? No.
Because
It's not down there?
obviously libel is in print, but
Right.
but
No, and
verbal.
slander is included in that.
So
100%.
would that be affected by the NDAA of 2012, the repeal of the Smith-Mundt Act for propaganda?
What do you mean?
Well, the repeal of the Smith-Mundt Act and the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 that Obama signed, it stated that propaganda can be used against, or I don't want to say against, but can be used towards the American people, and it doesn't have to be fact. So essentially, the news channels can give false information under this protection. I'm not going conspiracy here. I'm just saying they can.
No, I'm saying you're saying
and they're not
that they
held
can.
liable. They're not held liable for it,
Yes.
which would essentially be an exception to the free speech rule.
I mean, kind of like 60 Minutes did on Sunday.
Oh my God. We'll talk about that later. That was
Okay, we'll
horrible.
get
That was
that'd be
absolutely
the after
horrible.
party,
That should have been, yeah. I mean, that should absolutely be illegal.
right? But they're not going to get charged with anything.
No, they won't. And you know, really, I mean, you look at everything that's been going on in the world, and nobody gets charged with it. But that is an exception to free speech. Perjury may generally be punished if they consist of knowing lies through generally not if they are honest mistakes.
So is it an honest mistake when you?
Okay, so United States versus Alvarez is going to be an honest mistake case, I believe.
Okay.
Did you find it, Renee?
Which one? The Alvarez? Yeah, I posted that in the chat as well, and I'm putting it on our links. So.
What is it real quick? Just give me the
Oh,
nuts.
sorry.
Nope.
Let me get there.
Yeah, because I got Prezi up.
I was trying to jump ahead and get to your stuff. Okay, facts of the case. So on July 23rd, Xavier Alvarez, a member of the Three Valleys Water District Board of Directors, attended a joint meeting with the Walnut Valley Water District Board of Directors at the board's headquarters. Mr. Alvarez was invited to speak about his background, and he stated, "I'm a retired Marine of 25 years. I retired in the year 2001. Back in 1987, I was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. In fact, Mr. Alvarez had not received the Congressional Medal of Honor, nor any other military medal or decoration. He had also never served in the United States Armed Forces. The Stolen Valor Act of 2005 makes it a crime to falsely claim receipt of military decorations or medals. On September 26, 2007, Mr. Alvarez was charged in the Central District of California with 2 counts of falsely representing that he had been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor in violation of the Stolen Valor Act of 2005. He moved to dismiss on the grounds that the statute violated his First Amendment right of free speech. The district court denied Alvarez's motion to dismiss. The respondent thereafter pleaded guilty, but reserved his right to appeal. He appealed to the U.S. Court of Appeals in the Ninth Circuit. and the court reversed and remanded the lower court's decision. It reasoned that the Supreme Court had never held that the government may prohibit speech simply because it is knowingly false, and that some knowingly false speech could have affirmative constitutional value. The Court of Appeals denied the government's request for rehearing. Therefore, thereafter, the government appealed the court's appeals decision. And we have a conclusion down here. Did you want me to read the conclusion or?
No, that's all right. I just couldn't remember what the case law was.
Yeah,
You know, and that's the stolen valor stuff, man. I was in the military. I don't know how I feel about it all. If you're using, if you're lying about your military service to obviously procure some kind of benefit, then I'm 100% on board. But if you're just crazy as shit and you're out on a street corner somewhere yelling that you were in the military and you're wearing a uniform, whatever. I mean, yeah, you're a nut job, man, but I don't know. I don't know that the government should be coming down on all these whack jobs that are out there just saying it, and it's not hurting anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
but this guy wasn't on the street corner. It sounded like
No, he wasn't. No, this is totally different.
Yeah.
This seems like straight fraud to me and should
Right,
not be
right.
allowed.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
And
I mean, you
Yeah,
see,
he- Lying about his credentials, basically, in order to secure a job or
Right.
position. in a job.
sure,
Olive
absolutely.
Garden makes me show my freaking military ID to get breadsticks on November 11th.
Yeah, right.
Like, I can't even get a meal at a capitalist establishment without showing my ID.
Yep.
So
That's
why
for
should you
breadsticks?
walk
Did you-
around-
Brad?
No,
did you say
listen,
breadsticks?
and I'm all for it. If somebody says that they were in the military and they get free breadsticks, charge them, right? I'm all for that.
Wait. So you got to show your ID to get the free breadsticks at Olive Garden?
The whole meal, the breadsticks was just the one I chose to say, and I
Gotcha.
said that
Okay.
because
I didn't know that. Do they ask you for that to vote too?
I was gonna say, I know what you're
Oh, here we go.
oh boy, Bill, now you're taking
right,
us.
I'll
off
stop.
track.
I'll stop.
Jeez. All right. So listen, I'm running so far behind. So I'm going to move on to obscenity. Obscenity is hardcore pornography, punishable if the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that the word taken as a whole appeals to a shameful or morbid interest in sex or excretion. The work depicts or describes in a way that is patently offensive under contemporary community standards, sexual conduct specifically defined by applicable state law, and the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And that's Miller versus California, 1973.
And I am posting all of these in our document, so.
All right. So yeah, obscenity. Now, obscenity is dealing obviously more with the hardcore pornography, words, swear words. You're allowed to go out and swear, but then we have these disorderly conduct statutes, right? Every city has them, and it's basically what they say is that if people with ordinary sensibilities are offended, which I don't know, I've always thought is a little weird, because if you get enough people together that just don't like what somebody's saying and they're claiming they're offended, I mean, could somebody be charged with disorderly conduct? Have they in the past? I'm sure they have. Fun little side note, the police are not people with ordinary sensibilities, which is why you can come up to a cop and, call them a fucking pig and, swearing at them and, whatever, you say whatever you want to them, and nothing happens to you, because the courts have ruled time and time again that the police are not people with ordinary sensibilities. So, that's why, you see these videos and you're like, why aren't they being arrested? Well, that's why. And when you're in the middle of a riot situation, good luck finding, a few more people involved in that riot that are going to be like, well, you know what? I'm really offended that he called you an effing pig. So, but yeah, the obscenity covers more the hardcore pornography as opposed to just obscene language. Next is child pornography, and the case is kind of crazy. So obviously child porn, everybody knows what child porn is, right? It is not protected under the First Amendment. What this case is, though, Ashcroft versus the Free Speech Coalition back in '02 is it's protecting the porn industry when they are putting out videos that they claim are kids. And what the court has said is that that's not good enough, that there actually has to be kids harmed in this, actual children that were harmed. You know, if they're using a 25-year-old girl who looks 14 and they claim that she's 14 in the video and they release this video under their artistic license, then they're going to be okay doing that. As long as no actual kids, and at least that was the law. As far as I know it, I don't know if it's changed here in the last few years. I think it should. Whether or not there's actually kids that are harmed by this or not, if you're promoting it as a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old kid, it's a horrible.
That's disturbing to me
It
because
is.
all that does is it puts things in people's heads that then could lead to other things.
Would you
From
call that-
Heritage, what Heritage says is that sexually themed live performances, photographs, and movies that were made using actual children may be punished even if they do not fit within the obscenity test. This does not cover digitized pictures, drawings, or text materials, which are constitutionally protected unless they are obscene. The court has reasoned that child pornography is unprotected because it hurts the children involved in its making. So the exception only covers cases where actual children were indeed involved. And that is Ashcroft versus Free Speech Coalition, and he won it. So
So you're saying it's okay if it's not a child, 18-year-old, that looks like a child, and then they're telling you, passing it off as it is a child.
mhm. Yep.
Aren't we like really finely close to the incitement line? Wouldn't you say?
Well, I don't know, man. Remember incitement, right? Unless you're telling people, hey, you need to go out and have sex with kids right now. Hey, follow
Yeah.
me. We're going to go to this elementary school and we're going to go have sex with kids.
Okay. Yes, you're right. It's not incitement, enticement.
No, you're probably enticing people. Sure.
Oh, yeah, you are.
Because who's watching those videos?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Yep.
I'd like to see the hard drive of all the people that are watching those videos, right?
Well,
like
maybe
what-
that's the way to catch them.
Good for you, officer. I don't want to see him. I don't
Well, I
want to see
don't.
him.
We got a guy who does that stuff and he's going to be a broken human being when he.
Oh my God. Yeah. I can't even imagine.
That's all he does is these child porn cases. And I mean,
That's got to be terrible.
Does he do the sexting cases too?
Yeah, well, the school resource officers handle a lot of the sexting stuff. But he's doing hardcore, like
Wow.
3-year-old kids getting raped.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the stuff he sees day in and day out.
That's-
Yeah.
So how,
Yeah.
I would hope that the city, and not just our city, I would hope that any city who has guys that are assigned to this thing offer the appropriate mental health services for these people when
Yeah.
they're getting
Sure.
out, because that breaks a human, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I don't want to see it.
Mm-mm.
Moving on, we're into threats. Virginia Black, 2003. I don't remember
Yeah.
what this one was, but from Heritage, speech that is reasonably perceived as a threat of violence and not just rhetorical hyperbole can
Kick
be
your butt.
punished. Now, that is one of the things that when people come in, that, and they say, look, I'm being threatened by so-and-so, by Joe Smith. And we say, okay, what did he say? He says right here, if you read it, says I should get my ass kicked. Well, Joe Smith's not saying he's going to kick your ass. He's saying you should get your ass kicked, right? Even if Joe Smith says he's going to kick your ass, if it's not just rhetorical hyperbole, then you might have a case, right? If you truly believe that Joe Smith is going to come out and do this, it's just kind of like menacing, right? Or aggravated menacing, and he actually has the means to do it. Okay, if Joe Smith is living in Utah, says he's going to kick your ass, has never been to Ohio before, he only knows you online, and we get those all the time where people come in and they want to file those kind of charges, and that's just not.
Did you want me to read anything about this case or do
I
you?
don't remember it at all. I mean, if you have a quick. summary on
I
it.
do have them all up here. So Barry Black, Richard Elliott, and Jonathan O'Meara were convicted separately of violating a Virginia statute that makes it a felony for any person with the intent of intimidating any person or group to burn a cross on the property of another, a highway, or other public place, and specifies that any such burning shall be, I can't pronounce it, prima facie, I can't remember.
Prima facie.
Yeah, evidence of an intent to intimidate a group, person, or group. At trial, Black objected on First Amendment grounds to a jury instruction that cross burning by itself is sufficient evidence from which the required intent to intimidate could be inferred. He was found guilty. Amara pleaded guilty to charges of violating the statute, but reserved, that's our dogs, reserved the right to challenge its constitutionality. In Elliott's trial, the judge did not give an instruction on the statutes. Oh, my sons must be home. Evidence provision. Ultimately, the Virginia Supreme Court held, among other things, that the cross-burning statute is unconstitutional on its face, and that the evidence provision renders the statute overbroad because the probability of prosecution under the statute chills the expression of protected speech. The question was, does the Commonwealth of Virginia's cross-burning statute, which prohibits the burning of a cross with the intent of intimidating any person or group of persons, violate the First Amendment? So the conclusion was that in a reality opinion delivered by Sandra Day O'Connor, the court held that while a state consistent with the First Amendment may ban cross burning carried out with the intent to intimidate, in which 4 other justices joined, the provision in the Virginia statute treating any cross burning evidence of intent to intimidate renders the statute unconstitutional in its current form, in which 3 other justices joined. I can go on and read the rest of it, but
No, that's all right.
it's on our link. It's on our link page. So I'll make sure to post that in the comments so everybody can find that again.
All right. So moving on from threats to fighting words, which is all kind of flows into each other. Fighting words are face-to-face insults that are addressed to a particular person and are likely to cause an imminent fight. Those can be punished. More generalized offensive speech that is not addressed to a particular person cannot be punished, even if it is profane or deeply insulting. So I know Danielle is interested in the fighting words, and it kind of falls into the threats with me. When we're working, fighting words are the same. I mean, it's the same thing. Just if somebody, well, face-to-face insults that are addressed to a particular person, right? I mean, that's the key there for the fighting words. Somebody who is given a speech and talking about how a certain group of people or even a certain person probably deserves to have his ass kicked.
So in this case, a 19-year-old department store worker expressed his opposition to the Vietnam War by wearing a jacket emblazoned with "F the draft, stop war." The young man, Paul Cohen, was charged under a California statute that prohibits maliciously and willfully disturbing the quiet of any neighborhood or person by offensive conduct. He was found guilty and sentenced to 30 days in jail. Did California statute prohibiting the display of offensive messages such as "F the draft" violate freedom of expression as protected by the First Amendment? And then that's where we are. So.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, that kind of smacks of the disorderly conduct. I really hate the disorderly conduct statutes. I do.
How California's changed.
Well, yeah. Yeah, right. Back in the war, I mean, they were a red state. But yeah, the disorderly conduct statutes, man, for me has just always been.
It's the way out.
It is. And
or the way in, I should say.
It's an all-encompassing charge,
Mhm.
right? Anybody who does anything, I mean, you're giving the police so much power to arrest somebody on disorderly conduct.
That's the go to jail free card.
It is for real. I mean, you can almost make, according to statute, a disorderly conduct case on anybody at any point. When we stop somebody on the side of the road and they start yelling at us, and we're in a busy parking lot, I mean, we could make the case according to that law for disorderly conduct. That, you know, there's people around and people with ordinary sensibilities are listening to this. And I mean, a lot of those cases get dismissed, but it's just, I don't know, man.
But
It's always-
in 2008, I was charged with aggravated disorderly conduct for being in South Central Park after dusk.
Well, there's more to that story.
Um,
Gotta be.
I never refused to leave.
Who was it that charged you?
I don't even know. It was 2008.
We'll talk about
I,
that.
bar- I,
in
ba-
the
I barely
after
know.
party.
I barely know what I had to eat for breakfast on Saturday. I couldn't
Yeah,
tell you.
that'll be one we can talk about
I'd
in the
be
after
curious to
party.
know because I have the list of usual suspects in my mind right now, and I would be interested to know if it was one.
Oh,
of them.
we'll talk about it in the after party, or maybe in the after
Yeah,
party.
yeah. We'll
Yeah,
talk about it.
I got to work tomorrow, so we got to get moving here.
And you,
So-
and I'm sure you can look it up tomorrow. So
oh, I am.
you can.
Oh, you will.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on here, speech owned by others. It's basically intellectual property laws such as copyright law may restrict people from using particular expressions that are owned by someone else, but the law may not let anyone monopolize facts or ideas. So questions on that, it's pretty self-explanatory. Facts and ideas are always out there in the public. You know, nobody can own those, but and you see that the case is Harper and Row, which is a publishing company.
Mhm.
So
It had to do with the publishing of President Ford's memoirs that he contracted with. So if you want info on that, you can read the case law on it.
all right, and the last one is commercial advertising. I'll just read it straight from Heritage for you guys. Is commercial advertising is constitutionally protected, but less so than other speech, political, scientific, artistic, and the like. Misleading commercial advertising may be barred, whereas misleading political speech cannot be. Commercial advertising, God, that's so messed up. Commercial advertising may also be required to include disclaimers to keep it from being misleading. Such disclaimers can't be required for political speech. Recent cases hold that commercial advertising may not be restricted for paternalistic reasons because of a fear that people will learn accurate information, but will do bad things based on that information. For example, buy more alcohol, smoke more, or prescribe more expensive pharmaceuticals than the government thinks wise. This rule applies only to speech that proposes a commercial transaction between the speaker and listener. It does not apply to speech that is merely sold in commerce, such as books, videos, and databases. So,
Okay.
what's that?
I said, okay. So they're all those links will be posted in our documents that,
Yeah, and if you know what, and if everybody wants to get together after the end, after we go through these things, because if I start doing this the way I think I should do it now, we should probably get through these amendments here within the next couple of weeks. Just be done with it, and then we can go back and we can take a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, have attorneys come in here and talk about the different nuances to each amendment. But the whole purpose of this thing was to do the originalist Constitution, to understand what it said. Now it is going to be incumbent on you to make sure that you are in compliance with laws, case laws that applies. Just remember though, every case law is not a good law. And we put up with bullshit case law for too long. All right. Right of assembly and freedom to petition. So, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. One of the big talks right now, and has been forever, is whether or not these are two separate things. Because of the way they're written. There's a school of thought that this is all one thought, the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. The other school of thought is that these are two separate things, that obviously you have the right to peaceably assemble, and you also have the right guaranteed to you to petition the government for redress of grievances.
If
don't know.
you look at the punctuation, I would say that this is an item in itself, like together. They're both one thing,
One thing.
to peaceably assemble and to petition at the same time.
Well, if that's the case, then I guess then a lot of these things where, you know, with the whole COVID thing, and you had folks that wanted to get together for different parties, right?
Mhm.
They wanted to get together for, you know, whatever, concerts, for, you know, things in the park, whatever. By that definition, I guess this wouldn't apply then.
Well,
right?
here's the question. When they say petition the government for a redress of grievances, what is that actually, what kind of petition do you have to have? Is this a way of petitioning or the government for a redress of grievances? I don't know.
I don't think so. Where's David Davis at? Is he still here?
Yes, he is.
I bet
Yeah,
he's
I'm
got
here.
something. You got something to say here?
Uh,
I'm very disappointed.
well, I don't want to go too far down the track on this. I think it would be, it's my interpretation that those are probably intended to be separate things. But you would be required to then, it would beg the question, what is the petition, the government for the redress of grievances? I agree linguistically with Renee that it does seem as though they are connected.
Well, I can tell you that Heritage, which is the Heritage Guide to the Constitution, which is the conservative Bible, they have this broken down into two separate things.
And I will say constitutioncenter.org also does. It says it protects two distinct rights
And that is how
and petition.
That's how I feel. I feel that we have the right to peaceably to assemble, and we have the right to petition the government for redress of
I
grievances.
think
And
traditionally
they
it's
need
been
to
taken that way,
change, they need to
Yeah.
change that comma to a semicolon then.
right?
Excuse me,
There's
excuse
an
me.
example where the language
If those
probably,
two things happen to come together, great.
Right.
But if they don't, then I think each one stands on its own. And you
Yeah.
got to remember what they were coming off of, right?
Mhm.
Question.
The Crown did not, there was no petitioning the Crown for anything.
Somebody asked a question.
Bamalam has a question.
Well, because I can't find my little hand raising thing. Where's that at on my screen?
Under reactions.
Well, that's what I thought, and I went there and I didn't see it.
Oh, under
There's a
reactions.
hand
Oh my
clap.
goodness, the
just
dogs.
push all of them, just
Was
push all
that
of
your
them.
question? Was your question about the hand raising thing, or is there another?
Well,
one?
that's one, but then the other one was, I wanted to say if it was to include both of them, wouldn't you not have the second and it would just read, not the second and it would just read the right of the people peaceably to assemble to petition the government if they
That's
wanted
fair.
it to be all one?
That's fair.
Mhm.
But again, where's my hand raiser?
That's,
Damn. I hate.
I
these
read it as
newfangled
two
things.
separate rights.
and I've always read it as two separate rights. I believe it is.
It probably is. I just like to
Well, I'll
be devil's advocate. That's how I
do the
always.
same thing. And that's because if you notice throughout the rest of the amendment, there's a semicolon separating different thoughts in there, if you will.
Mhm.
These all come after a semicolon. So if you look at the English part again, it kind of indicates that maybe these were the same.
Yep. Well,
And that's where it could be confusing. That's
Right.
where it could be confusing. I've always felt that they were two separate rights, but I can understand the linguistic confusion there with all the others have or, and this one has and. But I think traditionally we've considered those to be two separate things. Right to peaceably assemble. There's assemblies all the time, and you don't have to explain what it's for. It could be church, it could be bridge club, it could be whatever, peaceably to assemble. And then separately, also a right to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
well, and what do you guys think too on, so while you have the right to peaceably assemble, the government also has the right to control that, right? By way of getting permits, by telling you what route you're allowed to take,
I know.
Mhm.
where you're allowed to be. And then, well, first off, I mean, so what do you think about that?
So could it be written to be kind of cover protests specifically? The way that's written.
Well, yeah, I think
Well, and
personally, I think protests fall into the peaceably assemble
sure,
because
sure it does. And you
Yes.
got to remember though, that I
Correct.
mean, we were coming off of
Well, I'm
The
just saying,
red
just the
coat-
way it's written. Do you think
the
they
red
had
coats-
protests specifically in mind?
the redcoats were breaking up groups that were subversive to the crown, right? You could not just meet and talk about that. Everything was done in the shadows. Everything was done in the basements of taverns. So yeah, so that's one of the things that they were worried about, and that they. So yeah, it probably has a lot to do with protesting, but I think peaceably to assemble. I mean, if you want to get together and you want to talk about how shitty the government is in a bar somewhere, then, you know, First Amendment protects that, not only by speech, but by giving you the right to peaceably assemble.
Right.
You
I
look at it
concur.
right here.
well, and not only a protest, but if you wanted to get a group together and talk about how great the government is, you know, you're peaceably assembling for that purpose too. I'm just saying.
I mean,
devil's
our
advocate.
group is.
Well,
So
the,
maybe-
the content, the content.
Maybe he needed to re-dip his quill in the ink for the dot above the comma. Maybe it was intended to be a semicolon.
Yeah, maybe it faded over time.
I don't know.
All right, so my other question is on
We're
this.
really down to
is-
commas and semicolons.
So when we're talking about this
It's
peaceably
important.
to assemble, and we're talking about free speech, and we're talking about the First Amendment period, how about these colleges, right? And I'm not talking about private colleges because they can do whatever they want. But how about these public colleges, these state colleges that only have certain areas that they call free speech zones? Where now you can go to the corner of First and Third Street and you can, you know, as long as you get your permit, you can go and you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. When you're talking about a public university, right? My free speech zone is anywhere in public.
What about
Anywhere in public.
high schools?
I think
Correct.
that is probably out of necessity for safety reasons to try to make sure that
Sure it is.
you can talk anywhere you want, but when you are getting a large group of people, you have to consider traffic issues and safety issues, medical.
But we're not even talking about large groups of people with these
Right.
universities. We're
Yeah.
talking about conservatives that are getting shut down, that,
Yeah,
you know, that are just up there trying to pass out pamphlets or do their thing, and they're being told
Well-
they can't because
Well,
they're-
you know what? Their conduct could be seen as disorderly.
and you know what though? Then don't go to those universities. Money talks.
Well, the problem is most of these private colleges are now becoming state-funded universities.
Yes, I know.
Well, that's true. I mean, they do. They get a lot of state money for sure.
Yeah.
I think even Oberlin gets a fair amount of state money.
But are they still called Oberlin College, or are they Oberlin University?
No, it's Oberlin
In
College.
college still, I thought
Right.
still.
No, it is.
Are there semantics between university and college?
Maybe I'm wondering the same thing because this could be a discussion for after. But I mean, like
Yeah.
Denison University used to be Denison College. We
Mhm.
went to visit last week. Heidelberg College is now Heidelberg University. So University of Mount Union we used to be Mount Union College. So I don't know.
But
So-
when they're separate colleges within an
R-
institution, as in like a college of business and a college of education and a college of. So-
Right.
No, I'm talking about the actual college itself went from a college like Mount Union College to University of Mount Union.
A lot
But
of,
that was my understanding too, because they were founded as a college that specialized in one area. And
Mhm.
they started building multiple a college of business, a college of,
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
yeah. And so once they have multiple offerings or multiple colleges within their a university. So,
Yeah, but most of them have had multiple offerings as far as majors and stuff goes.
yeah.
it's just a matter of when they decided to change the
Maybe
name.
you have to reach 5.
I don't
Maybe you
know.
have to have
I
5.
personally, I have a problem anytime anybody's speech is hindered in a public space. whether you agree with it or not, right? I mean,
Yeah.
all the worst speech is what is protected under the First Amendment. That's why we have it. We have
Right.
it for the speech that not everybody agrees with.
Well, if you flip the coin and say that you have a BLM, protest instead of a Republican protest, you want that to be safe. You want it to be controlled. You want it to be within, say, we're gonna let you have all the speech, everything that you'd like to go on, but we want to contain you to this area so that if it does get out of hand, if you have people from another, an opposing viewpoint come in, we can control that and make sure that you're safe. So I kind of see that as not a problem as long as they aren't restricting what's being said and discussed. I mean, I'd like that protected for both sides.
I've always said that. I mean, there has to be rules in order to have a free society. You cannot have a
Yes.
free society without rules that have to be enforced. I'm not an anarchist. I don't believe that it's just survival of the fittest. And when you walk out of your house, you might make it home, you might not. I mean, there has to be rules. I get that. I just, sometimes these colleges though, when I see one kid who wants to go out there and he wants to say his piece and they're telling him he can't because he's outside of a free speech zone. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess personally, I look at it and I'm like, I wouldn't ask.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask. I would just go do my thing. But then they're
Right.
going to kick you out. And now you got this long protracted legal battle you're going to have to fight. But
I guess
Hey,
it
you know
depends
what?
on,
That could set precedent.
well, it could.
Exactly.
It's time for the lions to stop trying to bring the sheep in.
exactly.
Time for the lions
it
to stop
depends
waking
on
up
where
the
you
sheep.
go.
It's time for the lions to start waking up the other lions.
Yep.
So, yep. All right.
Kathy had her hand up. Kathy, did you have a comment?
Yes, yeah. I mean, the peaceable assembly should go to both parties.
Mhm.
And we don't see that at the college campuses. If they have a conservative speaker come in, they are
That's-
shouted
Oh, yeah.
down and
Look at Ben
berated and
Shapiro.
screamed
Yes,
out.
that's true. I
And
have a problem
so
with
if you're
that.
going to apply the peaceable assembly rule, it has to apply to both parties in that transaction,
Mhm. I agree. Yeah, like that's happening to people. That's happened a lot, way too often, I think.
Yep. For
Um,
sure.
somebody
Alright,
should
so-
have stepped up and squashed that.
So what I think to be the major takeaways here, and let me know if you think I'm off base or, if you have something else that you think is a major takeaway. So first off, you don't have the right to say what you want in settings not controlled by the government, right? You can say what you want, but just be aware that wherever you are and you're saying what you want, they have the right to shut you down. They have the right to send you on your way and you have to leave. The First Amendment only protects you from the government controlling your speech. That's it, nothing more. Free speech is not free at all. It is not a free for all. Some speech actually prohibited and you're always responsible for what you say. So just because you can say it doesn't mean there's not going to be repercussions. And you see that online a lot where people are, where they'll say something just absolutely outrageous and there's some kind of repercussions that come down and people start screaming, well, it's their free speech. Well, it is.
Mhm.
And those people are certainly allowed to say it, but there's repercussions.
Mhm.
You are responsible for whatever comes out of your mouth or what you type, right? Now, just like me right now, I've got free speech, right? I could complain. I could put up whatever I want. I could put up the most racial, vile shit. I've got the right to do that. But if I do that, my employer also has the right to terminate my employment. So if I'm going to exercise my free speech, I need to be aware that there are ramifications that are probably going to be coming my way, and I need to accept those. You need to weigh your free speech with what is possibly going to happen to you. And as long as you're okay with it, you got the right to say it. But how many
Daniela
times-
had raised her hand.
Okay, sorry. First of all, my dog is panting so loud right now. Hope you can hear us.
We're all dog people.
Well, we watched the Constitution Center's video before this, and one thing for a takeaway was they were drawing a direct connection between the inalienable or unalienable, depending on the time period you want to say it, rights, and the 5 rights given in the First Amendment, that they say that these 5 rights are the rights given by God or nature, depending on your beliefs. This is the Constitution Center's actual words. And I just thought that was interesting because I thought that, like, obviously
Well,
they're important, but I didn't
We
necessarily.
talked about that before. I think what I've been pretty clear on that is that the Constitution does not grant you any rights at all. There are no rights granted by the Constitution. What the Constitution does is tell the government that these rights will not be infringed by you. It's not giving you the right to free speech. You have the right to free speech, but it is telling the government. So I'm 100% on board with you.
Yeah.
Yep,
You
those
think
rights
that
are all
these
natural rights.
really are the unalienable rights of all the rights in the amendments? These are the ones, like, not the Second Amendment. Like, I just thought it was interesting to say, no, it's these 5 specifically. I just thought that was an interesting take for the Constitution Center to, like, declare, because you could say that other rights are unalienable, like your Second Amendment right? Couldn't you?
Sure.
But why did they say it's just these 5 that are the direct correlation to the preamble of the Declaration of Independence? I just thought that was interesting that they made such a statement at the Constitution Center.
I don't know. I'll have to look into it.
Me too. I was going to say that's an interesting take. I'd like to see more on that.
Yeah.
So
You think the second would cover life and liberty? And if you're a hunter, pursuit of happiness or
This
food.
is going to be a train wreck next week.
oh,
Yes,
you have
it
no
is.
idea. It's going to take us probably a month to get through the second.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's going to take us one day. I'm
But
sure.
I'll be at soccer practice and probably sitting in the bar, so you'll miss me.
Thank God.
Well, I wouldn't say we miss you, Bill.
No.
No, you won't.
All right. So, First Amendment, government can never dictate how or what you worship or what you don't worship, right? You have the right, when it comes to worship, you have the right to pray to the flying spaghetti monster. You have the right to be a Catholic. You have the right to be a Muslim. You have the right to be a Hindu. You can do whatever you want in this country. The government cannot get involved in your religion at all, period. End of story. And finally, you can always peaceably assemble through the government, though the government can dictate time, place through permits. You can always peaceably assemble, which is one of my big problems with the lockdowns.
Peaceably.
Well, and I have it capitalized.
Yep.
Like David said, words have meanings. And the capitalized words of the Constitution were there for a reason. Peaceably. The second that it is not peaceable, you do not have the right to, you lose your First Amendment rights.
So no dancing.
No what?
No dancing.
Is this some Footloose reference? What are you talking
I
about?
have no
yeah,
idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Was it Footloose? All right.
Yeah, right on, dude. Well done.
You just can't mosh pit.
Right.
Oh,
No,
my friend, and I am way guilty then. I have, I had some mosh pit days. I got some stories I could tell you.
Oh, I look forward to that.
So anyway, First Amendment down. Let's do a little quick at the end here because I got all discombobulated. I had a whole lot more to say, but I just got all screwed up today.
Bless you.
Man,
Bless you.
Thank you.
Computer went down and
You're hiding behind your Prezi. There you go.
oh no, I was moving over. We're good.
I know you were hiding them. Okay.
No way I'm hiding. I got my
Wayne Fox's fired up flags.
Right on.
Damn straight.
Pretty sure he's
All right,
making
y'all.
reference
Hey,
to his
that was a
facial
good,
hair, not Wayne's flag.
That was
Where
good talk, guys. See
Where
you in
did
the
he go?
after.
Did he jump out?
I'm here.
I think
He's gone.
I think Jim may have accidentally shut down his.
Yeah, I think we lost Jim.
He
So
did.
I'm going to go ahead and invite you all back to the post discussion party afterwards. I'll post the link and I'll get this recording up and hopefully Jim knows just to go to the post and we'll cover anything more in depth over there. So, and maybe,
Thanks, Renee.
so thanks guys. And anybody who's not joining us, have a good week and we'll see you next week for the Second Amendment.
Have a good
Bye,
night.
Wayne.
See you shortly.
Sorry.
Oh, well,
Bye.
we just signed
Yeah.
off.